Hey, everybody! We watched She-Hulk episode 9, so you guys know what time it is.
Hit that intro.
Woo!
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Alright, everybody, if it's your first time joining us, welcome. We're two dads who love all things fandom, from Star Wars to Star Trek, Marvel to DC, and Middle-earth on down to Westeros. We love it all, and we want to bring all of our insights and love of all things nerdy to you, our viewers. So if that's your cup of tea, then we're here for you, and you should definitely subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on all of our amazing reviews and insights that we bring to all of our favorite fandoms. So thanks for tuning in. My name is Chris Matthews, and I'm joined as always, by my robed buddy, Mr. Matt Parham. How you doing today, buddy?
Doing pretty good. Wow. What a, I don't know, kind of episode we've got to review today. So it's going to be an interesting ride.
There's some stuff, so we're going to talk about it here.
There's some stuff and some things.
Yeah, there's some stuff and some things with this one. So we watched She-Hulk Attorney at Law episode 9, titled Whose Show Is This?, directed by Kat Coro and written by Jessica Gao. So let's pull up the old Rotten Tomatoes score on this bad boy. So, you know, I always do this here. So Rotten Tomatoes score overall got a 73%. And diving a little bit deeper, like I've been doing lately, it looks like the average critic score out of 15 critics that have rated this show, the average score is a 7 out of 10. So that's what we're looking like. And I kind of feel like that might be pretty darn accurate for this, but let's find out what these two dads think of this episode. So what'd you think, brother?
Wow, it was definitely a weird one, and I don't think there'll be any argument on that from any audience member anywhere. I mean, we break the fourth wall to the nth degree in this one. And to a fault, and to a lot of good comedic beats as well. But to back up a little bit, the thing that I really loved the most about this was the cold open that they did, making it look like the original Incredible Hulk series. To me, was so much fun.
That was extremely fun, and that was probably my favorite part of the episode, was that cold open. So it was a lot of fun. I used to watch that show too, so it was just like
me as well. And I feel like they, you know, in sort of like a backhanded way, gave fans like maybe you and me, I know more for myself, are wondering why they put so much effort into this CGI She-Hulk.
Which we talked about in one of our earlier episodes. If you haven't, go back to that. I think it was either episode 1 or 2 that you brought that up. Like, why aren't we having somebody play that role? And we got to see what that looked like. And it kind of looked like a female version of Lou Ferrigno up there.
It really did.
Whoa!
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
It was a great beat, and I loved how they started to do it again in the episode, and she quickly cut him off. You know, like, we're not going to narrate this thing.
It's like, no.
So those bits of fourth wall breaking, I think, were really well done. And then we got something that just comes straight out of the comics, right? Except for perfectly matched for the Disney Plus, you know, format. And that she pops literally out of your screen and crawls over to the Marvel Studios one. And I thought, that's really cool. And then I thought, well, wait, what happens now?
I was like, wait, okay.
She crawled into a documentary series, and they're not going with, like, the show in production. They're going with, she popped in there and is outside of even that show's production. Yeah. And then goes and talks to her own writers. Nobody seems to be room. Nobody seems to be, like, surprised that their character, you know, I thought of that moment in Stranger Than Fiction with Will Ferrell where he finally meets the author of his book.
Yes. Yeah.
And she's just amazed, you know. And I thought, well, we'll probably get some of those moments, but we didn't. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it was just kind of a weird thing. And it just kept getting weirder and weirder. And there, you know, she's then sent into a room with Kevin. Which
how does Kevin Feige feel about this whole scene?
I'm sure he had something to do with it.
He had to have, you know.
Yeah, but it was spoiled just a second or two ahead of time for me because I actually had the subtitles on. I just couldn't figure out how to turn them off, honestly. It's an annoyance I have with Disney Plus on my TV. And I don't know if it's a TV or if it's Disney Plus's thing, but it's always, the subtitles just constantly on, and I can't turn them off. But when the writers were saying, oh, you got to go see Kevin, it spelled out Kevin as... Right, with the periods like as an acronym. And so I thought, okay, well, something's weird with why they're saying it. I'm wondering if he's computer-based. And then she gets in there and he's, this
there
AI.
You go. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I thought that was fun, and I love that she asks him about the X-Men, and just he won't answer anything. Thought it was a bummer how he said she's not going to be in a film.
I know, right?
It's like, oh man, I mean, that would have been cool. Like, we're going to have, we've got slated Avengers movies. Is she not going to be a part of that? But who knows? Both of us simultaneously sigh.
I know,
but I thought it was all fun, but then it just kind of got weird, and like, he grants all of her requests, and then
she gets to write her own ending.
She gets to write her own ending, right? But then we just kind of like didn't really get much of one. It's like, okay, well, a lot of the plot that's been set up throughout the last 7 episodes, we have called where it was going for a long time because they intentionally foreshadowed.
It was definitely stuff. The breadcrumbs were laid out, and those breadcrumbs were basically like whole loaves of bread, essentially, for us to grasp onto that. And all for this episode, for them to play with that idea, be like, really, this is where we're going? And I actually liked that, and I was like, well, Matt's probably going to really like that this is what they're critiquing in their own show, because it is a problem that Marvel had, especially in Phase 1, is they would pit a hero against their anti-hero equivalent.
With the same powers.
With
the
same powers and everything.
Suit and,
So I'm glad that they called it out and everything, but yeah. Where it ended up and the extreme fourth wall breaking, it was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Daredevil dropping out of the sky during the day.
I know.
Like,
I know.
What is this?
Yeah, it was like beyond Deadpool. Beyond any fourth wall breaking that I've seen, like even in Ferris Bueller or something. So, again, I thought it was very interesting. And I thought it was pretty well done. It just didn't give us much of an ending at all. It was just kind of like, okay, well, we're not going to do any of that stuff that we've been alluding to for the past several weeks.
Emil Blasi goes back to prison. Todd gets arrested.
Everything's sort of reset.
Yeah. Where do we end up? Like, she's still She-Hulk, I guess. But yeah, like you said, like, I don't think that they, like they said in the show too, I don't think they plan on having this character in the movies or anything. I feel like this is going to be its own separate compartmentalized show. And for what that's worth, I think that's probably a good idea, because it's a fun little show that does break the fourth wall and can do whatever it wants, and it doesn't affect the MCU as a whole. So, I enjoyed it. But, that definitely was a mess, I would say. I'd say it was like they threw everything at the kitchen sink and really wanted to try to see what was going to stick and whatnot. And, so it was interesting.
Well, and part of me thinks, like, because of how it ultimately ended, I wonder if they just didn't know where to go. Like, the whole time, this show has wanted to stand out, wanted to be different, wanted to be, an advocate for strong female characters and all of that sort of stuff. And it just didn't seem like they knew how to pay it off. Yeah. And so this was their answer to that. And it's an interesting answer, and it's not a bad answer. It's just a weird one. And so it's just kind of leaves us with the idea of like, well, I don't know what really happened over the last month and a half of my life watching this show, but there we are, She's still very much an interesting character. She's still well played, and the actors did all a good job. I didn't particularly like the rendering of the Abomination. What did you think about that?
I mean, I haven't liked the rendering of She-Hulk, so, I mean, the Abomination too.
Didn't he just look a little cartoony? You know,
he did.
Like
and they kind of address this when she's talking to Kevin up there about like how they have a budget and they need to save that money for other projects and whatnot. So can you transform off screen for us? Okay, now do it now. So it's the same type of thing. I just don't think that they had the budget to render the Abomination as well as he should have been, because he looked pretty good in the movies and everything. But here, for a movie from like over 10 years ago, so yeah, it is what it is.
Exactly. It is what it is, and I think it pays good homage to the comics. It kept it unique.
Very true to that.
But I cannot see this with all the multiverse stuff going on. Like, if they had her breaking the fourth wall while also going up against Kang in future movies, it would just get maybe too wild. You know, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was, to me, kind of the length that we need to get to and then start to reel it back in.
I agree. I think there should be a reeling back in and a
Same
grounding.
with Loki.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Like, I feel like these things are just going a little too far, and it's like, okay, we need to ground some of this stuff. I mean, we got a show like Andor, which is beautifully done, very realistic, in the Star Wars realm, and I kind of want to get back to that with Marvel as well. I want a realistic story again.
Right. Well, you just lose all stakes. You know, we talked about that with Thor. It just doesn't seem like anything really matters.
No.
You know?
Yeah. And that seems to be the trend right now for Marvel. So I'm really afraid for this entire phase and the next phase of Marvel. It's like, well, have we seen the best of Marvel so far? And that is questionable. And I don't know whether or not we're going to see anything of the same type of caliber that we had in phase 1, 2, or 3 moving forward. That time might have passed. We might be past that the Marvel dynasty.
I really miss it, man. I don't know about you, but
me too.
Man, those just feel like classics now. And I know that when those were coming out, a lot of the people in the film industry didn't like how popular they were and how the storylines repeated. You know, all the stuff that She-Hulk just critiqued here in a couple scenes. But I don't know. For my money, I mean, they were fun, and they gave us some pretty authentic character moments that I think paid off very well in Infinity War and Endgame. And that whole buildup, I think, was just masterfully planned. As much as you could do for, you know, sort of quirky superhero fare. And I just don't see that continuing here through phase 4 and beyond.
I agree.
I don't want to say that, you know, it's not all going to be worth it. I'm very much looking forward to Wakanda Forever.
Oh, me too.
And you know, that looks like it's going to be a great film. So hopefully that could be a grounding for Marvel here. We'll see.
Yeah, me too. You know, there's been some really good stuff, and there's been some really bad stuff. You know, Spider-Man No Way Home is one of my favorites. You know, I'm glad that we have that. You know, Wakanda Forever, man, that looks like it's going to be epic. I can't wait to see that. You know, Ryan Coogler is back for that. I love that director, so I know we're in good hands when it comes to that. So there's good things on the horizon too. So, you know, we could be wrong about this.
It's still very much invested in Marvel here, and interested to see where they're going to go.
We still love this fandom, guys. But let's go ahead and get into our ratings. And, you know, this is the finale. So let's go ahead and rate this episode. And let's also kind of have an introspective view of the entire series that we got here, too, and kind of rate that. So what was your rating for this episode? And then after that, what was your rating for the series, brother?
Yeah, this episode in particular, like I said, it was interesting to watch. They had a lot of funny moments, and I think for what it was trying to do, it was pay off enough of some of those elements that were comedically built up in previous episodes. Like I previously mentioned, don't think that it paid off some of the plot points that they purposefully sort of misled us with. In previous episodes. So for me, that's kind of to a fault. I'm going to rate this as an 8 out of 10 for this episode, and I'll get to my overall series rating in a moment. What do you think, Chris?
Okay, so yeah, for me, there was too much fourth wall breaking. I mean, I know, and I've talked to the community at large, and I've commented with folks that have really liked
you were out
this,
on the streets,
yeah,
getting the vibe,
social media and whatnot. Getting into it, talking and commenting with people who also like this and very much like this, and they love how this is John Byrne's comic run of She-Hulk, and they're like, this is genius, this is exactly what she was portrayed like in the comics, and I love everything about it. And I'm like, yeah, and I can see that, and I recognize that, and that's for those fans of the sensational She-Hulk. This show is for those fans. It's not my cup of tea. It was too much fourth wall breaking. It felt like it didn't come together, and I just want to see cohesive stories, and you can make a sitcom with a cohesive story. But I also really wanted to see Jen Walters deal with being this strong superhero as a woman as well, and dealing with the modern challenges and tribulations that a woman has nowadays. And they kind of bring this up in the beginning of the series. But for this episode, I just felt like, okay, she gets to make up her own ending, and it's all kooky and crazy. So I didn't think they stuck the landing.
Lost sight of that.
Yeah. So they didn't stick the landing for me, and that's what's most important when in a finale for me. So in this episode, I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. I didn't enjoy it as much as some of the previous episodes, and a lot of those episodes I can take as their own and enjoy as a single sitcom procedural law show. But for this, it's just like, oh, you're bringing all that stuff together. Okay, we got Hulk Todd and all this other stuff, and Titania busting in, and then they make fun of all that and then just rewrite the whole thing. It's like, okay, so, and like you said, there were no real stakes. What became of this? Like, where are we? Like, did this actually affect me in any way that I think differently after this show? Even if it is a sitcom, I feel like good sitcoms can still affect you emotionally and intellectually, and I didn't get any of that from that. So that's why I gave it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah. Okay. What about the series overall?
Series overall, Tatiana Maslany kills it, and I loved the character of Jennifer Walters, and I absolutely buy into her as this character, as She-Hulk, and I loved her, and but again, for me, it's like I wanted to see more from this character, and I would want to see this character in the MCU, but the way that the show has gone, it seems like this is going to be very contained and self-contained, and seeing, I'm going back real quick, Hulk introducing his son Scar from Sakaar.
Yeah, what?
And the look of this character
he looked
too.
Like a frog.
Yeah, I know. And he looks totally different in the comics, guys. And this is just like, why did they go with the haircut and his face? Like, yeah, it looked terrible. Side point, though, I just had to bring that up, though. I hated that. And so that's another reason I rated that episode so low. I was like, really? This is where we're going to introduce this? This should be in a film or something. And he should look better. But yeah, for the show and everything, there were a lot of hit and misses, a lot of side subplots that were just like, what? Why did they do that? And a lot of the writing was like, it seemed, I don't want to say it's a lazy writing, but it was just, I wouldn't have made those choices. And it felt like they were like, well, what do we do with them this week? Let's do this. Oh, should we introduce Daredevil? No, let's do that until the end and just have a whole wedding episode and then make fun of the fact that it's in the middle of the season and people want to see things get done. And so I didn't like the fact that they kind of played with us in that way. And it's obviously it's intentional for the show, and the writers wanted to do something completely different like that. But I just still would have rather enjoyed a more straight-cut She-Hulk show, and I think there could have been a lot more for that. So for my rating for the entire season of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, I'm probably going to give this a good 7 out of 10. There was some good stuff in there, so it's not unwatchable. I very much enjoyed it. There's episodes in there that I have rewatched, so there's some rewatchability with it, and I very much enjoyed. But overall, I felt it was a bit of a mess, and they could have done a little bit better with the story and the characters. Yeah. How about you, brother?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Like we've talked about, the fourth wall breaking seems to have been a convenient writer's trick sometimes to excuse just a plot line that was going nowhere, or dropped plot threads. That's really what this whole show is about, is just dropped plot threads. Things spontaneously happening. And I mean, I know that, again, they bring that up in the finale, that it's all a mess, but do they really get to call their own show a mess when they made it that way? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. It's head scratching.
So, yeah, exactly. It felt pretty head scratching, and I don't necessarily need a linear narrative. I think that fourth wall breaking can be cool, and we've seen it work wonderfully in Deadpool.
Yeah,
but
they do that pretty well in the show.
and right. So we also know that superhero movies with narrations aren't necessarily bad. It's worked great for Spider-Man. So you can have those elements in a show without it giving excuses for its own faults. So with that, and so many of these side stories that I didn't find interesting, I actually felt irritated by the fact that they had a superhero lawyer show that just didn't take some of that stuff a little bit more seriously. And I really, really hated that we got some genuine character moments that let our actors have some room to breathe amidst all of this quirky comedy, and really show their strengths as dramatic actors. But they were followed almost immediately by some kind of weirdness, some kind of comedic beat that made everything that they said before just moot. You know, and like we've talked about, it just rips the stakes right out. It feels shallow, and for a show that wanted to say something about women characters in movies, not just superhero films, this was a missed opportunity. So for me, all of that stuff doesn't just degrade the show, like wasn't my flavor or something. It makes me upset that they couldn't do more with it. It's like the ending of Lost,
Oh, God, don't bring that up.
I wish they... Right. But I was just so disappointed. Like, they could have done so much more. They could have really paid everything off, but they didn't. And it was purposeful. And for that, it makes me mad as an audience member, because I was just not impressed with the story at all. And I wanted to be.
Me too.
So I'm going to give the series overall a 5 out of 10, because 50% of the time I felt like they did a good job.
Okay. That is a very reasonable rating. So we got a 7 out of 10 for the series for me, and a 5 out of 10 from Matt for this series. So who would you recommend this series to if you were going to recommend it to anybody?
Probably... Like, I don't know. I want to make a joke here, but even my wife stopped watching it because she just didn't find it interesting at all.
My daughter too, same thing. Like, she lost interest a couple episodes back and hasn't really been excited to watch it or anything. We watched all of Miss Marvel together, and she was always really excited to see that throughout, and so we watched the entire series. This, she kind of dropped off, and she wasn't interested in it anymore. So I can't even say that it's a show that I would recommend for young 10-year-olds either. So
I'd have a hard time recommending it to anybody, because I just don't. I mean,
I think if you enjoy
it tries to be quirky, but it's a mess. So
I think if you enjoy like Rick and Morty, if you enjoy quirky stuff that doesn't always need to make sense together for you, if you can look past all that kind of stuff, maybe you would get something out of this.
Yeah, shows like Rick and Morty is a perfect example. Like, all you have to do to enjoy Rick and Morty is have just kind of a little bit of an idea of like cultural references.
Yeah.
With this, because it's embedded in the MCU, half of the jokes wouldn't land if you hadn't seen the stuff before it. Yeah. And if you've seen the stuff before it, then you come to expect certain things to... Not necessarily that they have to follow a superhero cliche storyline, but you you expect for these characters to be taken somewhat seriously to some degree. And we only get that happening just a little bit of the time. So, I mean, okay, actually, maybe you nailed it. The people that like Sensational She-Hulk, this is your show.
There you go. Yeah, if you were a fan of that comic run, you're absolutely going to love this show, and it is definitely for you. And that's great. It's like we love all fandoms here at Fatherly Fandom. That's why we called ourselves Fatherly Fandom, and we want to highlight all the good stuff about those, even the shows that we don't necessarily like and that are not really made for us as well. We can find some good in those, but there's always going to be somebody out there that this is their favorite show, you know, and we celebrate that. And if this gets you into Marvel, if this gets you into something else that we all can love, then that's great, and that's it's served its purpose. So yeah,
I totally agree.
So there you go. That's really all I have to say about She-Hulk. It was a blast to get to talk to you about it, brother. It was a blast to get for you guys to join us here on Fatherly Fandom, watching the show with us, talking about it. I can't wait for the next Marvel event, or Marvel picture presentation, or TV show, so that we can talk about this again. And I'd love for our community to come together and talk about this stuff as a whole as well. So if you haven't, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, and we can build that community up, and we can all talk about these amazing fandoms and disagree or agree on the different stuff that we like or dislike about it. And if we get to that 100 subscribers, guess what's happening? My daughter's going to shave my head.
Off comes the hair.
I should probably mention this at the beginning of the episode, too, so the people tuning in for 5 minutes of the show will hear it as well. But for those of you that have stuck with us this entire time and haven't subscribed, yeah, definitely subscribe, because you'll get to see that fun. And I wish I looked good with a shaved head. I really don't, guys, so this is going to be quite a sacrifice for me. With my long, flowing hair at the time.
Quite an experience for me. I will love to interject little little comments every single episode. So let's make a Chia Pet out of Chris Matthews over there.
Geez. Luckily, my hair grows pretty fast, so it won't be for long, hopefully. I don't know. Maybe it'll be like that episode of Seinfeld where the guy has a shaved head and he decides to grow it out again, and all of a sudden he's getting bald spots.
Yeah, exactly. That happened to so many people in boot camp. I can tell you, it was a pretty rude awakening for a lot of those guys.
Right? Yeah. Not fun. But all right, guys, it's been fun reviewing this show with you guys. Catch us through the next thing. We're going to be reviewing Andor. We're going Rings of Power, the last episode of that, House of the Dragon. Lots of other stuff. We're doing Spooktober here. Hereditary. We're going to be watching that and reviewing that on Sunday, so can't wait for that scary movie month that we got going on here. So lots of fun. So from our families to yours,
have a good one.
Adios.